Quick meeting.
You never know.
Yeah, never know.
Never know.
Let's see.
So where did Phil go?
Shoot.
Good evening, Citizens Council and staff. This is the regular meeting of the Littleton City Council for August 2nd, 2016. Call the City Council meeting to order. Clerk Hefner, can you call the roll?
Deputy Clerk Norton, but yes, I will.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Creature of habit, that's okay. Mayor Beckman,
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Brinkman,
Here.
Councilmember Cernanek,
Present.
Councilmember Clark, Councilmember Cole,
Present.
Councilmember Hopping,
Here.
Councilmember Valdez.
Present.
Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Item number 3 is the approval of the agenda. We have an agenda that's been posted and presented to City Council. I do have one change I'd like to propose. Does anyone have any other changes? Nope. Chief Stevens is here tonight. He just wanted to take a moment to comment on National Night Out, and with Council's permission, I'd like to include him at this time. Chief Stevens.
Thank you, Council. Doug Stevens, Chief of Police. I just want to take a moment and thank once again the Littleton community for continuing to show our true colors. And we had tonight is National Night Out, which all of you know is an opportunity for communities to get together throughout the country and just get to know one another. And it's an opportunity for first responders, especially the police department, to get out there and have positive contacts with the community. And Littleton, once again, has stepped up to the plate. 32 registered parties in Littleton for tonight. And I know many of you were bouncing around between those, as was I, and it was just a fabulous opportunity for us to get out there and interact in a positive manner, like I said, with the community. What I want to talk about too, and just take a moment and say thank you to the Littleton community. I don't know a better way to do it, but since the recent tragic events with the Dallas Police Department and the Baton Rouge Police Department in a few weeks, 8 police officers ambushed and murdered, there has been a tremendous outpouring of support for our officers and for our police department here from our Littleton community. We feel that regularly without these types of tragedies, but I mean, they really stepped up after this. I got to tell you, the amount of food that has shown up at our department is just amazing. Food and cards and some really heartfelt items, drawings and sketches from children and prayers and flowers, and it's just amazing. And I just wanted to say thank you on behalf of the men and women of the Littleton Police Department to our community for showing us that type of support and for helping our officers to really feel that they are appreciated and supported out there. So thank you. Thanks.
Thank you, Chief Stevens. And I know it goes without even saying that our prayers and thoughts are for the officers who lost their lives and faced other challenges physically and emotionally in the last couple of weeks. So thank you for your comments. Brings us to agenda item number 4, which is public comment. Public comment's an opportunity for anyone to express opinions or ask questions that are not part of the public hearings. There are 2 opportunities for public comment: at the beginning of the meeting, which is the one now, which we try to limit to regarding consent agenda and general business items. And then later in the meeting, we open up a second public hearing opportunity to discuss other council matters, and that's before the council reports. An immediate response should not be expected. Anyone who would like to speak during either public comment session, please sign in on the green sheets that are in the back of the room. I have this one with one person on it, and if somebody has missed the opportunity to, I'll make sure you get a chance to talk. Please ask that the comments be civil. Disrespectful behavior will not be tolerated. And you have 3 minutes time limit for your discussion with council. And I have one sign up, Pam Chadburn.
Good evening, Council. I'm Pam Chadbourne and live in District 1. I wanted to comment about consent agenda item 5B, which is to transfer appropriations from wayfinding to a couple of traffic signal projects. I would like to remind you that almost 2 years ago, Colleen Gray, who lived on Federal, was killed crossing Federal at 9 p.m. at night by a woman who was driving home after having purchased milk at King Soopers. And that's a tragedy for everyone. The person who hit her, imagine living with that your entire life, and then imagine having your life be gone. Where is the traffic control on Federal, Council? Jeannie Erickson and I spoke to you about it. And regardless of the state of a pedestrian walking across the street, it is the obligation of our city to protect those pedestrians and the drivers. We have interesting now flashing lights at crosswalks on Littleton Boulevard, and I'm going to tell you that's all I asked you for. What I asked you for on Federal was there's a curve there coming from King Soopers to around where there's hundreds of townhomes there. There's hundreds of townhomes, folks. And there's drivers coming from King Soopers to get to all of those residences south. It's inevitable that this will happen again. Now, we were told that we had applied for federal funding for a crosswalk for students, and that's great. But honestly, there's a lot of other people who live there, and it's just our obligation in Littleton to protect both drivers and pedestrians. So you're diverting money to these other two projects. Where is the traffic control on Federal? A person died. Please, please. I don't expect you to change this resolution tonight, but somehow get this on your agenda and make it so. Some kind of protection for both drivers and pedestrians on Federal. Thank you for consideration.
Thank you. Mark, do you want to make a comment? Because you've just mentioned this recently to us, or to some of us, I know.
I'm not aware specifically of the accident on Federal location, but I'd be more than happy to talk to Ms. Chadburn about the specifics of that. I do know we have applied for a federal grant for a crosswalk in that particular area. I'm not sure of the status or even the location relative to this particular accident. But I am planning on reporting back to council with a monthly public works report. I'd be more than happy to kind of include that in my report.
Thank you. That's the only person who had signed up. Is there anyone else who would like to speak regarding the first part of the meeting, which is the items on the consent agenda? Yes, please.
I'm Carol Breezak. I lived in the 4th District. Two things. We had a National Night Out party in our neighborhood and had a neighborhood grant. We had a wonderful turnout from fire and police. We always have a good event, but it's always a lot more fun. When we don't have to cook, we can go and buy some good food. So that was very nice. The other thing is I'm on the committee that met with the planning board to talk about the zoning update on the land use code. I was absent for the July 11th meeting. And the reason why I'm bringing this up, it kind of relates to minutes. I listened to the meeting, but there were several times when I could not hear who was speaking because they were not speaking into the microphone. So it's just my way of reminding you that the video minutes do not do the job. So thank you.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to speak at this time? I don't see anyone. This brings us to item number 5 on the agenda. It's the consent agenda items. Consent agenda items may be adopted by a single motion. All ordinances must be read by title prior to a vote on the motion. Any consent agenda item can be removed at the request of a council member. Consent agenda item A is Resolution 37-2016. It's a resolution approving a police recruit training agreement with the City of Lakewood to use the Jefferson County Sheriff's Office and Lakewood Police Department's combined regional academy for recruit police officer training. Consent agenda item 5B is Resolution 42-2016. This is a resolution approving a $380,000 transfer of appropriations within the Capital Projects Fund from the wayfinding projects to the East Dry Creek and South Broadway Transportation Improvement Project and the County Line and Broadway Traffic Signal Project. Consent agenda item C is ID number 16-175, the certification of the July 19th, 2016 regular meeting minutes.
Mr. Chairman, I move approval of consent agenda items 5A, 5B, and 5C. Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve items A, B, and C. Any discussion? Ready to vote?
The vote is 6 in favor. The motion carries unanimously.
This brings us to item 6 on the agenda. These are ordinances for second reading and public hearing. Tonight we have one item. Item A is ordinance 10-2016. It's an ordinance on second reading authorizing 5 farm lease agreements for the Littleton Englewood Wastewater Treatment Plant. This will be presented by Mark Ralph, who is our acting city manager and also our Public Works and Utility Director.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council. I'm actually going to introduce Jim Talent. He is the treatment manager for our wastewater treatment plant that we obviously share with the city of Englewood. And so Jim's going to come up and make a brief presentation about the farm leases. So, Jim?
Thank you very much. I've got a brief slideshow that goes with this presentation. Through the course of the treatment process, we remove solids from the wastewater that we get from our service areas. Those solids, in addition to the water that we discharge to the South Platte River as a clean product, are also beneficially used and recycled in their entirety. What we do with those biosolids is what we term those, is we use them on dry farmland to act as a soil amendment or a fertilizer to help cut down on chemical fertilizer use, to help bind the soils together through the organic materials that are present in those biosolids, and we have shown this to increase the protein content of the wheat that's grown. On the map behind you shows the sites that we have that are permitted for biosolids. The numbers are strictly our permitting numbers that are issued by the state of Colorado. To give you an idea of where this farmland is, it's about 80 miles east of the Littleton Englewood wastewater plant, just past Byers, about 25 miles, very near to Last Chance, Colorado. So it's about an 80-mile trip each way. This is a photo of loading the biosolids into one of our spreaders, getting ready to do the application. This is the application really in progress. It's something that you don't want to stand near by any means. And this is a photo of the wheat crop that was grown last year. So it's a recent photo there. Quickly, there's some facts from last year. The cities both own about 6,500 acres of farmland that is farmed. 5,600 of those are used for biosolids use. The others are a contingency site that we don't use because there's a lot of development that's going on nearby, and that's near Kiowa and Bennett. So it's between between the biosolids farm and where we are now. Last year we applied about 3,500 dry tons of material, and the ammonia content of that material was about 435,000 pounds, which is what we did not, or what the farmer did not need to use in the use of a chemical fertilizer application. So we're conserving materials there. And the crops that we grow are primarily dryland wheat, which is used for human consumption, and on occasion dryland corn, which goes into animal feedstocks, because the corn that we grow on dry land is not like you see in the grocery store by any means. So the entire plant is used for chicken feed, dog food, things like that. When we purchased these properties originally, we contracted with the farmers that we purchased the land from to continue farming these sites for us. We would take care of all of the biosolids application, the testing, the reporting, the sampling, and everything else involved with the biosolids side of the process. And then the farmers did all of the farm management, so we didn't have to worry about that. Originally, we used to share our costs of 1/3 as a farming tenant agreement. And then when we got to the point of considering a cash lease, we did about a 10-year analysis on the cash flow from farm proceeds and the expenses and everything like that. And it was decided at that point with the supervisory committee's approval to go to a cash lease, because there were years where we were good as far as the commodities and the pricing and everything like that, and there were several years where we lost money. So ultimately, it helped me reduce my budget as far as the division operation, not having to worry about sharing farming costs, and it basically set a set revenue that we see every year, and we can rely on that. In looking at this, or for this year in particular, it was time to look at, are we charging enough for these leases, and trying to find a source of, who do we compare to for what's going on out in the rest of the state. Did not prove very fruitful until we got together with the Colorado State Land Board, who does establish lease rental rates on their state lands. And in those rates that they renew, or that they review and renew about every other year, I think, they consider commodity prices, the crop yields, and also private dryland crop rates that are charged as well. So that became the basis this year for our new pricing structure. All the cash leases are identical. The only thing that's really different is their legal description, which is used to determine the acreage, which really sets the lease amount. And with the only exception is one of those leases does contain grazing land in the middle, and that's set at that was maintained at the $8 range that we had set previously. And in talking to that farmer, that was even a little bit higher than the state land right next to his that is used for grazing as well, but he was good with the $8. Now, the leases were all reviewed by the Littleton Englewood Wastewater Plant Legal Counsel and both city attorneys, and approved before they went to the farmers for a signature. That's the end of that one. So anyway, these leases are for 5 years. They're renewable annually, so we can comply with the Tabor laws. And last night, the Englewood City Council passed on their second reading the approval of these ordinances, or these leases as well. Are there any questions?
Does council have any questions of Mr. Tabor? Mr. Talent, I'm sorry. I'm not seeing any questions. Thank you, sir.
You're welcome. And if you are interested, we can arrange tours out to that plant. If you need a nice time to get away where it's quiet.
They're great tours.
Hopefully on a day that's not spreading.
No. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. This is a second reading and a public hearing I want to open the public hearing at this time. It's 8:19. I do not have anyone who has signed up in regards to the public hearing. Is there anyone who would still like to speak? Please.
Council, I don't think I'm asking for any change in this agreement this year, but I have heard that, and I spoke to you once before about the sewer treatment plant and trying to modernize our treatment methods. I think there are better ways, and we so far have avoided it, and I'm not sure why. You know, I'm going to talk about an even further improvement in treatment that I think maybe we need to think about. Sewer treatment plants tend to accumulate biological chemicals that we take as medicines and other things, and they accumulate, is my understanding, in biosolids. When these are put on farmland, the farmland is basically sterile. It may have some nutrient molecules, but it's sterile and builds up toxins because these medical molecules don't break down. They stay there. They're active in certain ways, but we don't test for them. And so they're in the soil and build up. I'm not bringing you any data. I don't have it. I'm not staff. It's not my job, and it's probably not your policy. But in the long term, this is probably something that, as we get denser and use up more and more land, we need to think about. So I just want to mention it because I think organic farming and live soil produces better food and better health for the people who work on the land as well, and better for the system. So I'm concerned about a buildup of toxin in farmland because we're just building out on farmland and decreasing the amount of it that's usable. So along with climate change, you know, we're going to need to care for our farmland better than we have before, and the pollinators and other kinds of creatures that depend on it to live. So I'm just going to mention that, put it in the hopper as a consideration for the future. Not for this time, but maybe for the future. Thanks.
Thank you. Do I have any other speakers? I don't see any. I'm going to close the public hearing at 8:22. If I could get a motion in a second, we could have any further discussion. Do I have a motion?
Mr. Chairman,
Phil.
I move to approve on second reading the ordinance authorizing 5 farm lease agreements for the Littleton Englewood wastewater treatment plant.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Do we have any further discussion? I do have one question I'd like to ask. Mr. Towle, could I have an opportunity to ask you that question that was asked by the public about the medical waste residue that may exist in what is being spread on the farmland? I remember the presentations at the plant, and I believe that was discussed as one of those standards by Colorado Department of Public Health and Environment. But could you address that?
Okay, as far as what is termed emerging, okay, I got to get the phrase right. Elements of emerging concern, which would include pharmaceuticals, things like that. There are studies being begun on what long-term implications might be as far as the land is concerned. We've not begun any studies on what's removed through the treatment process. The facility itself is not designed to remove any of those kind of contaminants that are coming in just by natural contribution by people in the service area. So to answer whether they're good or bad, we don't know at this point. However, there are studies that are beginning to be looking at those on what the implications are both on the water stream itself, because some of those do pass right through the plant, as well as what might be absorbed through the biosol or through the solids in the process itself.
Thank you. Does anyone on council have any further questions? Thank you, sir.
Welcome.
Not seeing any additional questions. We have a motion and a second for ordinance 10-2016. It's an ordinance on second reading authorizing 5 farm lease agreements for the Littleton Englewood wastewater treatment plant. Ready to vote?
The vote is 6 in favor. The motion carries unanimously.
This brings us to item number 7, general business. I'm sorry. Thank you. General business. We have one item of general business that was discussed partially. There was some question about the interpretation of what the authority of that watershed authority would have, particularly in regards to our wastewater treatment plant and anything else in the city of Littleton. The question was answered in the documentation that we've received. Mark, is there anything you'd like to add?
Mr. Mayor, if you don't mind, I'd like to approach council here. I have just a very short presentation to try to touch on some of those issues, because actually there were some good points raised.
Thank you.
I just have a very short presentation here, but kind of remind council here and our community, we have the Chatfield Watershed Authority. It was originally established in 1993. After several years, there was actually another agreement to continue the process that was executed in 1997. We've been operating under that particular agreement here ever since then. The purpose of the authority was established as a management agency by the state. Its purpose, and this is right out of the IGA, the Intergovernmental Agreement, promote a regional coordinated approach for the provision of water quality improvements and the protection of water quality in the Chatfield watershed. The recommendations of the authority are actually provided to the Water Quality Control Commission of the state of Colorado. And here's kind of a list of the members that participate in the Watershed Authority: Douglas County, Jefferson County, couple of towns. Won't go through the entire list, but it's a rather extensive list of water and sand districts, local governments that participate in this area. This map is obviously very difficult to read here, but if you look carefully, at the very north end is the Chatfield Reservoir. Immediately to the west of that, of course, is the Trail Mark development, and that's the major reason why the city is being invited to participate in this authority. And then clear to the south end, near the south end, is Larkspur itself. So it kind of gives you a little visual representation of the authority. This was originally proposed here as a resolution at the June 7th meeting. It was tabled to this evening. There was a request by Councilmember Clark to look at a couple of very specific pieces in the IGA that had to do with non-point source. Non-point source is specifically, as an example, a stormwater runoff. That was clearly identified in the original IGA and certainly in the 1997 IGA. And I think the concern that was raised was point source was obviously singled out in the 2016 IGA that's before council this evening. And a point source is a wastewater treatment plant, as an example. So Councilmember Clark was kind of questioning whether or not this is something new and what's kind of the limits of authority for something of this nature. So we did refer this to our special counsel. We also discussed it with the director of the authority. So the point source, again, as an example, a wastewater treatment plant, is currently the responsibility of the authority. There are no changes being proposed within the 2016 IGA. So what we see today as a responsibility for point source is being proposed for the future. This authority does not have any responsibility or act on the issues that lie within our Littleton Englewood wastewater treatment plant. The boundary sets their limits of authority, and obviously our plant is way beyond that. And just as another note, Littleton can withdraw from the authority with a 120-day notice here to the state if we, for whatever reason, decide to kind of withdraw from this authority. It is staff's recommendation that we do participate in the IGA. I think it does provide us an opportunity to kind of sit at the table to hear the discussion that's going on. Perhaps the issues are not as important to us specifically, but I do believe that the work that the authority can provide can provide some benefit to us if we ever were to pursue some water quality issues, say in the trail mark development, as an example. So that's the end of my presentation, Mr. Mayor, unless there's some questions.
Does council have any questions? Appears we have no questions.
Okay, thank you.
So I will be looking for a motion and a second.
I move to approve the resolution approving the amended and restated intergovernmental agreement establishing the Chatfield Watershed Authority.
Second.
We have a motion and a second for Resolution 31-2016, a resolution approving the amended and restated intergovernmental agreement establishing the Chatfield Watershed Authority. Are we ready to vote?
The vote is 6 in favor. The motion carries unanimously.
This brings us to agenda item number 8, public comment. This is the second opportunity for public comment. Again, we break this up into two halves. This public comment is an opportunity for anyone to express opinions or ask questions that were not part of the public hearings or part of the consent agenda that we just went through. An immediate response should not be expected. Hopefully you signed the card. I'll make sure you have an opportunity to speak. We expect the comments to be civil. Disrespectful behavior will not be tolerated. You do have a 3-minute time limit. I have 2 people who have signed to speak. The first is Carl Paulson.
Good evening, council members and mayor. My name is Carl Paulson. I live at 2460 West Quinn Avenue. I'm a professional engineer registered in Colorado. I'm here to talk about Denver Water's new rate schedule that went into effect April 1st. In 3 minutes, I'm not able to get into the details of my analysis. Instead, I will give you a little history on my efforts and provide some conclusions from the analysis, and finally, point out an issue that I would like for you to consider acting on. Back in late February of this year, Denver Water sent with their water bill an advertisement announcing a needed 3.8% revenue increase and also a new rate schedule. Being curious, I calculated that my annual bill would be going up 26%. So I contacted Denver Water and they confirmed this. Then I contacted a new member of Denver Water Citizens Advisory Committee, Michael Cowan. He indicated his bill was increasing similarly, that he was asking questions, and that he was getting what he called squishy answers. He then invited me to a Citizens Advisory Committee meeting. I spoke there, and then also on March 23rd, I spoke for the allotted 3 minutes out of Denver at that meeting. Following that meeting, I met with Angela Brickmont, Denver Water's Director of Finance. I have now received, I believe, all of the materials that were used to arrive at the new rate schedule. Along with that information, I received data that allows me to estimate the following. The City of Littleton, single-family residential customers, who make up 24% of the total service customer class, will pay $621,000 more per year as a group in 2016 under the new schedule than they would have in 2015. This is a 15% increase, with individual residents seeing an annual increase of up to 40%. Our Centennial neighbors, who make up 31% of the total service customers, will pay $890,000 more per year in 2016. This represents a 14% increase. Conversely, our neighbors in Cherry Hills, who make up only 2% of the total service customers, will pay $477,000 less in 2016. Now for my request. When future rate schedules are contemplated, I would ask that Littleton request representation on the Rate Structure Review Committee, should there be another one. There were 15 members on this committee representing Denver, the Western Slope, low-income housing, the Hispanic Chamber of Commerce, etc. And there was one municipality with direct representation on the committee. I don't think that I have to tell you that it wasn't Littleton and it wasn't Centennial. And I'm equally certain that you can guess that it was, in fact, Cherry Hills. The municipality that comes out of this rate schedule is the big winner with a 20% reduction in their bill. I would be happy to sit down and talk with you. Sorry, my time's up. Individually or as a group. Thanks.
Thank you, sir. Laura Rywick? Rewalk, please.
Members of council, my name is Laura Bewick, and oh, okay. The issue is the stagnant nature of the pond at Bowles Grove Park on Federal and Bowles, approximately. Need to get to the files on the. Oh, there we go. There we go. Okay, thanks. Okay, I have a few photographs that I took of the pond at Bowles Grove Park, and I would just like to share with you an email that so far I have sent to South Suburban Parks and Recreation, and I've also sent to some of the members on this council. I often walk my dog along the trails that go through this park. When we walk by the pond, I notice a very stagnant and swampy smell. It's been like this for the entire 38 years that I've visited this pond and that I've lived in Littleton. Perhaps if the city added a fountain or something to aerate the water and create dissolved oxygen, it would reduce odors from decaying organic materials. Adding oxygen increases available living space for the inhabitants living in the pond, which results in a healthier environment for both plants and animals and cleaner water. I'm interested to know what the appropriate steps are to getting a fountain in this pond, similar to fountains in other ponds throughout the city of Littleton. This effort will provide a much healthier environment for Littleton citizens' enjoyment. Boy, that one ended up, I'm not quite sure what happened there.
Uh-oh.
I guess they're upside down. Well, anyway, this photograph is an example of a beautiful fountain at a park in Lakewood, O'Kane Park. It's at between Newton and Teller on First Avenue. This is what I have in mind for the pond at Bowles Grove Park. Notice the nice stone border on this pond, and what a wonderful way to improve what is now a stagnant pond. Many Littleton citizens will benefit from a Bowles Grove Park fountain in the 2017 budget for South Suburban Parks and Recreation. Let's extend the beautification of the Platte River environment to a body of water nearby in Bowles Grove Park. The existing smelly, slime-covered pond could be brought back to health and maybe even potentially stocked with fish. Thank you. Are there any questions?
Thank you, Laura. And I believe the city manager can respond to part of that as soon as you have your seat there.
In fact, I remember talking to Ms. Bewick here at the, what was it, Berry Park? Yes, meet and greet that we had here, chat a little bit about that. As a result of that conversation, the Public Works staff has contacted South Suburban Parks and Rec District to kind of see what they were anticipating for this particular pond. It is an irrigation pond, so it does fluctuate with the water level. They are considering kind of an aeration system. Personally, I've been involved in some projects where we've added aeration. Certainly fountains is a form to aerate that. We certainly can pass on these comments to South Suburban, but as far as our understanding is that they are pursuing some kind of improvement there for that particular pond. I could certainly report back to council with more detail.
Great.
Thank you.
Great.
So I do have a question. So it is sort of shallow, right? So potentially a solution would be to deepen it and make the diameter smaller so the water that is there would, even when it is half the size of its total fullness, would still be able to bubble. Anyway.
Yes, again, I don't know enough about how they operate that pond, but I do know it fluctuates its water surface. Quite honestly, you can manage that with a aeration system. Perhaps they might have to excavate some of that long-term in order to accommodate some kind of improvement like that. But at this particular time, I really don't know enough, but we certainly could explore that.
Yeah, no, I just was
You bet.
tossing an idea out there because clearly when it gets down to 2 inches or something, not much you can do, right?
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Any other, do you want to comment on that same thing? Yeah, please.
Yeah, it's been a problem that's going on for 30-some years, and South Suburban hasn't found a solution for it. It's a part of the South Suburban does a great job for all of our parks for the most part, they really do. But that particular pond has been ignored for way too long. I remember many years ago when I played lacrosse over at that park, it was an issue back then, and it still is today. So maybe we can, someone on your staff can contact them and get maybe a schedule on what they do have planned. Thank you.
Thank you. I don't have anyone else who signed up for the second public comment. Is there anyone who I've missed? Pam?
Still Pam Chadbourne, living in District 1. So last regular meeting, that morning at 2 a.m., I heard, trucks on Santa Fe, and there's been work there. So, but that night, Tuesday night, when I went home from council, I noticed a new bright white light on my street rather than the old sodium light orange color that used to be there. And I'm sure you've all noticed the new LED Cobra heads that were installed by Excel. So most of you, that lighting is important to me. And I will just say, I think there's a missed opportunity here. The Cobra heads are full cutoff and downward directed, but for the street lights, which are very high, and you used to see this in the 50s all the time, there'd be a little skirt, just a little bit below the area where the bulb is housed, where the lighting sources are housed. And what that does is cut off glare to the side, and it directs the light onto what you need it to light. On streets, that is the way markers, the corners, the sidewalk, whatever thing is there that you want the driver to be able to see that marks the edge of the road. And that's what they're used for. That's what streetlights do. They shouldn't illuminate my house. I wish Doug was here, because the libertarian part of this is he didn't want to tell people how to spend their money on lighting fixtures, and I don't want the light in my house. The city shouldn't pay to put light in my house, and I don't want it there. And even people who want light in their house, you shouldn't make me pay to light their house. They can light their house if they want to or not, but we shouldn't pay for that. So Excel did this. My understanding is that the city had something to say about it 6 months ago. Could we have influenced the choice of the Cobra head to get, it's called shielding, to get this little shield around that bottom part? I sure wish we had looked into it, because if you're an illumination engineer, you can calculate this extremely well. And you make that shield so that the angle of the illumination doesn't go beyond a certain angle, and it lights up what you want, and it doesn't light beyond that. And that makes that's one of the things that I don't think you can have a great city without good lighting. It's a necessary, if not sufficient, condition. So I would like a shield on my light at Crestline in Nevada, a personal request. And just wanted to make that comment. Thanks.
Thank you. Any other speakers? That completes agenda item number 8, which was public comment. It brings us to agenda item number 9, comments and reports. City Manager.
That's right, that's me. Forgive me.
That's right.
Actually, I do not, but thank you.
Thank you. Item number B is council reports. Councilmember Cole.
I have a couple of things that I think are somewhat significant requests. Not challenging, just significant. One, the health of the trees downtown and much of the supporting infrastructure are a real concern. As several council members and citizens have observed, our downtown is showing its age in ways that are undermining its appeal and creating safety issues. We need to plan and reinvest in the infrastructure in order to maintain the vibrant atmosphere and economic vitality that we and previous councils have helped create. So I'm requesting that the 2017 budget include a multi-year capital plan to begin replacing and updating our infrastructure downtown. So
I'm looking for nods of the head because we are asking then council to do something, and I know Councilmember Hopping just shook his head yes. I will shake my head yes on that also.
Are we adding that to the to-do list we gave him last?
Yeah, we could very well do that if that's the way you would like to do it. But I would like to entertain Councilmember Cole's request.
Comment. This council voted down a streetscape plan, which would have included a lot of that study and a lot of that detail. We don't even know what needs to be done. We don't have any idea. Somebody would need to get down there and do a heck of a lot of study down there. What is downtown? Is it just Main Street? Is it Alamo? Is it some of the side streets? 2017 budget's going to be presented to us next month. So I would suspect that this would be something that would be a near impossible feat to accomplish in that amount of time based on what I would assume is that amount of detail and information that's necessary. So while it may be worthy of looking at, I would suggest that perhaps it not be a mandate for the 2017 budget and ask City Manager Ralph to kind of give some input on the practicality of doing something like this as you're
I did talk to him.
In the middle of it.
He can respond. I did talk to him before I decided to raise the issue.
Well, I have mentioned to a couple of council members that I have some concern about long-term the infrastructure here for the downtown. In fact, I even remember commenting on this issue during my interview here 15 months ago. You know, we have an amazing asset downtown, and obviously with the council not pursuing the streetscape, I think staff has kind of stepped back and tried to ask the question, well, what do we do next? Because we recognize that there is infrastructure issues that need to be addressed long-term. Our thought is that we would be presenting to the City Council during the budget process, and specifically the capital, some kind of modest investment over time. And obviously this would take a fair amount of conversation here, not only with the council, but obviously with the merchants downtown, to understand what it is we think we can accomplish over this, again, modest period of time. In my own mind, I do have some ideas about what I think does need to be addressed. I think there are some basic infrastructure issues. I'll give you one quick example, are the crosswalks. We have used kind of an asphalt coating colored, to provide some demarcation of the crosswalks while it's starting to peel off. So over time, we're going to have to somehow manage that issue. I think the streetscape project would have certainly gone a long ways to address kind of a master plan for a much longer period. I think what I am thinking, at least at this point, and again through a council conversation, would be some very modest approach where we do a lot of that planning internally. Again, the scope would have to be focused pretty narrowly for us to accomplish that with our capacity, but I think there are some issues that we probably need to talk about and how we might address here in the next several years.
We no longer have an arborist, is that right?
Yes, we do. Dave Flagg is an arborist. He certainly has expertise in trees. Quite honestly, trees downtown is another concern, not only that I share, but certainly Dave Flagg as well. I have been part, when I was with the city of Grand Junction, where we looked at our downtown, kind of a similar challenge when you certainly look at the trees, because there, all the trees were planted at the same time, and so they were all maturing at the same time. And I think we have a very similar kind of occurrence going on downtown. And so it's probably better for us to talk about, well, what are we going to do here so that we don't find ourselves in a position where we have to basically cut all the trees down at the same time to somehow replace them. Very complicated issue. Certainly, a lot of strong feelings, no doubt. I certainly remember a lot of them from Grand Junction. So I think that those are the kinds of issues I think that we need to probably talk about. And again, decide what it is we think we can approach at some kind of modest improvement over time. Maybe in the future, if the council decides that they want to pursue something in much more detail for a plan, we certainly could do that. But right now, I think staff is looking to suggest, again, through our capital discussion, some modest investment.
I was thinking that Dave, even while he is an arborist, during restructuring here over this past couple of years, that his position has changed and he's no longer acting as the arborist for the city.
Yeah, his function has changed over time. The kind of project I'm talking about, certainly the evaluation of trees in the downtown area would be something a little unusual for him today. He certainly has the expertise that could help us in that discussion, but he's the kind of person I would probably lean to, including engineering, community development, others, if we're going to do something like this, to try to find some kind of internal staff team to propose some kind of planning effort. Again, this is a very modest, I don't want to overpromise this, but this is the concept that at least staff has been contemplating here as part of our budget presentation.
And I'm thinking that, thanks very much, that it is on your chart, at least, or on the city's chart as far as keeping an eyeball on the trees. But I think a couple weeks ago or last week, we gave the acting city manager a to-do list of many pages. And I think if we add something like this to it, it may not be good at this point, because there's no way you're going to do that to-do list we gave you in the first place, other than a few of those items. So I'm thinking that maybe it's a little late, maybe for next budget.
Yeah, well, the issue has come up that maybe there's something little that can get done this year. There are some safety issues of people tripping over some of those grates around trees and so forth. So when I say, a plan over several years, I'm not necessarily saying dump a whole lot of money in there if we don't have it, but there's some things to be looking at, and if the larger vision is there, they can be done while still allowing subsequent, if we get tons more money, subsequent things to be done.
Well, and I'm thinking first things first. If there's a safety issue, then that just needs to be addressed, identified and addressed.
Phil.
Phil's first.
Phil.
Excuse me, and I, of course, office downtown, I walked around with Mark a little bit today, and some of the issues are safety related. A few years ago, they put in the bumpy pads at the intersections for the blind people to feel with their feet, which, by the way, they can't stand because in talking to some of them, because they don't have those reliably in other crossing areas. So if they're really going to practice crossing, which is Littleton is their lab, they prefer not to have them, but I understand they were mandated. But some of those are starting to pop up. And then, as Mark indicated, the red where it crosses the street is just peeling off, so you can see the street below it. That becomes problematic too, and there are short-term and long-term solutions for that. So some of those are important. The trees are another thing because they seem to be ending near or getting closer to the end of their life cycle, and a lot of those need to be pruned, but it's hard to prune them because they've got Christmas lights in them year round. So it becomes more expensive, and the power for those is coming out of buildings, and it's all suspended from above instead of ways from below, I think. So a lot of it is ADA. There are numerous places like going the east side of Prince Street, just north of Main. And also south of Main by Willow, there are places where you can't get a wheelchair between the building and the tree, where the tree is planted, because there's no grate planted there. So we have some ADA problems. So I think, I agree we need to have a relatively short-term capital plan down there, and this is not long-term. I agree with Councilwoman Brinkman that streetscapes would have addressed a lot of this longer-term, but even had that passed, we would have had some of these short-term issues to deal with. So if Mr. Ralph feels that something can be put together on a short-term plan, Jerry, your point's well taken about the to-do list. Let's add another item to the non-attainable to-do list. But if it looks to me like it does need to be addressed. I wasn't aware of it when we developed the to-do list at the level that Mark pointed it out to me today. So I would support what Councilman Cole was talking about.
Phil?
Yes, and the trees downtown are not the only inventory of trees that the city is responsible for, and it was actually mentioned in a couple of the National Night Out sessions. And I know that Dave is very aware of the emerald ash borer and the impact that can have on the inventory of city trees, some on private property, but some also on public property, and what that means. If we're going to put something forth on trees, we should probably look at the entire inventory of trees and what ought to be done in that space, and not just take a look at downtown, but some of our neighborhoods are graced with parks that aren't maintained by South Suburban, but are maintained by the city. And some of these are in pretty important parts of the city's trail system. And so would probably throw the emerald ash borer in there that might be 2 years out from when it might attack, and what we're going to be doing both on private and public property for that before it becomes a tree elimination, but what we can be doing to deal with foliage protection on that front, and would encourage us not to go piecemeal at this, but to do a thoughtful approach while we have the time.
Additional comments? So a lot of discussion about it really went farther than what the initial suggestion from Councilmember Cole was, but it sounds like the piece that is common to it all is the idea that it's a multi-year look, and it's not intended to be the long-term whatever, but rather short-term issues that could possibly be addressed on a year-by-year basis. Beyond that, I don't have a suggestion. We didn't get the 4 votes to support Councilmember Cole. Yes.
Quick comment. I would, if there are safety issues down there, I think that's just part of general maintenance, and I would expect Public Works to have that included in a budget to work on things like some of the grates that are popping up, or the stuff on the streets. When we approved those sidewalks or the street crossing things, we knew that there would be a replacement or a fix on those. They've actually held up better than I thought they would. But I'm assuming that's just general maintenance. That's stuff that needs to be taken care of and would be something included. I don't have a problem looking at a longer term, bigger picture situation of improvements down there that may come with a much bigger budget item. But I'd like to at least have some sort of a plan of what that looks like, and have us all agree as to what it is, what problems we're trying to fix or solve, or what issues that really exist down there. I'm not ready to do that at this point. I think, that may be a topic for a study session or something, but I'm not going to support Councilmember Cole's larger situation at this point due to those issues, but I would suggest that the safety issues obviously should get taken care of quickly. And I agree with Jerry too, or with Phil rather, that the trees in the city are that's a very large issue. In fact, Mineral Avenue has some pretty severe problems along that stretch with some trees that are dead and dying. So that's another, just keep adding money to the things that need. But I think that's probably something in and of itself.
Mark, any thoughts on how you'd like to present this in a budget? Because now you have the issue of clear-cut safety issues that probably we would desire to fix more immediately, and then maintenance issues that are more general and not specific. Any thoughts on how you'd like to manage that?
Well, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think, forgive me, Council, I wasn't necessarily intending to jump into a budget discussion here right at the moment. We're still trying to assemble all this and trying to evaluate what resources we really have. But I do think there is a little bit of concern about, quite honestly, there are safety issues that we do need to kind of manage. And they do, as Council has described, things that we should be taking on. So I think that's certainly a first priority. I'll take that into consideration here as we kind of prepare the budget, and really look forward to a capital discussion maybe a little later.
Councilmember Cole, do you have additional tonight?
Not on that issue, another
Go
issue?
ahead, please. No,
So
you still have
I have a request. I'm requesting that council send a message of support to the government of Ellicott City, Maryland, letting them know that we also suffered a catastrophic flood and that we recovered. But I talked to Kelly Nardi about this, and she understood what I was trying to get at, that we reach out as somebody that had an incredibly devastating flood, and it isn't going to help them a whole hell of a lot, but it is just a reaching out. Several of us have some background from that area, not that anybody back there would remember it, but it just is something that I think would be nice to do.
It's fine with me. I think if you draft a letter and have the mayor sign it.
If it doesn't mean lowering the flag again, I'm okay with it.
You mean it got raised?
Okay, I'm
I think
not
that's
hearing
fine.
disagreement,
Yeah.
so that's a great idea. Thank
That's
you.
all. Thank you.
Councilmember Hopping.
Well, thank you. I think we talked about budget, and there's good news out there in terms of cash, because we talked last meeting about some of the signage that's gone up, and specifically about the wayfinding project downtown, and that is still in process. We got a rough estimate back from the sign company what it would take to add the word historic to the sign. It prints in Santa Fe, and it's right around 10 grand. So that's, I'm going to encourage the merchants to see if they can get comfortable with the sign, because right next to it, it says established 1890. So that's, as Dave Flagg said to me today, that means it is either a really cool historic area or they tore it all down and just did something else. But either way, you should go see it. So we'll see if that works. And we are going to have one more sign that comes in as you come off of Santa Fe and go east on Alamo. There's a brick planter in front of you that hopefully keeps you from running into the stores there, the Three Chimneys. And they will add the word historic to that, because that has not been made yet. So that entrance will have the historic, so that's good. But the staff made some adjustments in the signage program after it was approved by council. I think the original budget was 1.3 million, and they're getting it done for around 530 because of slightly different approach to where the signs are placed and the number signs. So that saves us over $700,000. So kudos to staff for that. That can help us with a lot of the infrastructure. That'll pave a lot of roads. Last Saturday night, I got to do a ride-along with the police, and that was really interesting. And it certainly gives you a view that of the police department that I really appreciate. I've always appreciated the police, but it's when you see them at work, it's really encouraging to see how professional they are in the way they approach things and the way they really are serving a lot. I always thought police departments were organized strictly to give me speeding tickets, but apparently they do other things as well. So there were DUIs, there were persons of interest. I learned that on Saturday nights, men in Littleton don't wear shoes or shirts. They just walk around in long sweatpants, apparently is the uniform of the day. But, we had people that had not shown up for hearings that we, picked up, and it was very interesting. And I was with an officer, Krista Hamstrom, who was very professional, relatively new to the police force, but it reinforces what a good force we have. And we, as they work through the night, they'll serve an address, and other police will come to that address if they feel they need additional officers on the scene. And it was just really good teamwork, very professional, and so kudos to our police department. So that's all I have.
Councilmember Cernanik.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The young man is with me tonight. His name is Wee Lee, and he's going to be a sophomore at Mullen High School, but his penance for the evening comes in the fact that he's taking an AP government course. So he gets to spend the evening with me tonight as part of his penance, I suppose, on that front. At the National Night Out events that I attended, I'd like to say thank you to both the police and the fire that they're out there in the community talking to folks. They were engaged very much in the conversations, and the neighborhood grant programs as well as the National Night Out programs were being used, and a lot of kids were having fun on bigger slides than I might have thought, jumpy castles and other items. But the part that's behind a lot of it is that wouldn't occur without our local neighborhoods and our local neighborhood organizers kind of taking that hand to get the things going. And kudos to them and thank you to them. Secondly, at the end of this week, the Dr. Cog board is having their workshop for board members and alternates dealing with the areas of emphasis for 2017 and the 2017 budget, as well as getting background in the demographics, not just for boomers and those that happen to be a little bit older than boomers, but also for the millennials and what the impact is on the metro region as we look at long-term planning, and then receiving some additional background with regard what's happening both at the state and counties level with regard to mobility, and then what will prove to be probably a fairly interesting discussion is that around urban growth boundaries and what we do in the future to not only protect the open spaces we've become accustomed to, but also to deal with the development that the population influx into the metro region may mean as far as density across our metro region. And so it will be an interesting discussion among that. And so always open to folks and their thoughts, and I will share what comes out of some of that. But the last session is in part how we as various
communities in the metro region can be supportive of one another as we look to go forward. And thank you, Paul. I will tell Mayor Chrisman that she got a great deal from Denver Water. So thank you.
Councilmember Valdez, please.
Thank you, Mayor. Appreciate it. Let's see, attended the museum meeting last night. They have two more concerts left. We have one tomorrow night. It'll be Emily Stiles. It begins at 7 p.m. tomorrow night. Next one will be during Western Welcome Week, and that'll be Sunday the 21st, and that'll begin at 6:30, and that'll be Dakota Blonde. Let's see, this Thursday, they also have part of their Thursday lecture series. They will have Shohini Ghosh, and I'm sure I butchered that name, but it's an artist that'll be there showing how the artwork is put together, so it should be pretty exciting. You do need tickets to go to that. Also, the American Alliance of Museums has given the Littleton Museum a re-accreditation, so that's good for about another 10 years. One of the interesting things that the AAM had commented on was that they made some very positive comments about the museum board and their participation in that review for that accreditation. Well, let's see, the museum will have a new exhibit starting in September, Matteo, and Matteo is an artist, and it'll be some interesting art that basically hangs from the ceiling using different materials. That'd be pretty cool. And one of the other things, and this is for the acting city manager, there was discussion also about the crosswalk over there between the museum and the library right there over on Gallup, and the need for it. People, when they share that parking lot at night, it's kind of a little hairy out there at times. So that would be another place to add to crosswalk wish list. And also on the Federal Boulevard, that is an area that I hope we do get a chance to look at, because I think, as Ms. Chadbourne had mentioned, that is a pretty interesting area to try to. It's kind of like playing Frogger getting across that thing. So that's worth looking at as well. Thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem Brinkman.
Yeah, I have a couple things. On August 13th at 10 o'clock, we will start the celebration of the ribbon cutting for Station 19, our new fire station at Trailmark. And that is, it's very exciting, and it's actually, I think, been built quicker than we anticipated. The community is embracing it very well. I've talked to the fire department, and they're very excited to start working out of there. Police will also have an opportunity to do some service out of there, in addition to our public works and even South Suburban. So the community also will have a place to meet and gather there. It's a beautiful, beautiful station, and I think it's going to be a great amenity, and it's definitely going to be serving a portion of the population where we'll be able to improve service times greatly. And that's all good news. The Falls Event Center is also going to be having their grand opening on the 18th of August, and it's open to the public. And I would encourage everybody to go over there and take a look at that. We have essentially one event center in the city, and that's Hudson Gardens. And the Falls Event Center is kind of has a different bit of a venue. It's a lot more inside, but they are a national company that builds these throughout the country, and it's really gorgeous, and it's going to be great for meetings and that type of thing. And what's really cool, I think, is in that general area, which is off a county line in Erickson, there has just kind of organically, we had the Hampton Inn went in about 8 years ago, maybe longer, maybe it's been 10 years. And now, probably this time next year, we'll have 3 new hotels. The Marriott Courtyard will be opening up in a month and a half. The Marriott Residence Inn is breaking ground now, and the property across from the falls has been purchased by a hotel. So interesting that they all cluster up and gather around there together, but the Falls Event Center will provide great amenity for the community, in so much as it will hold a lot of different business meetings that then the hotels can accommodate travelers. This benefits the community in so many ways. Come down to Littleton, shop, dine, eat. I think it'll help Aspen Grove. And so we'll just need to be very conscious of taking advantage of sharing all the good, fun things there are to do with our new neighbors. Successful, kind of turning lemons into lemonade, have been meeting with the residents along Mineral Avenue. For years, there's been concern, and particularly when the new development started along Mineral Avenue, about traffic conditions, and traffic is really generated along Mineral by commuter traffic to and from Jefferson County. And we know that largely because of license plate surveys that we've done also. So it creates a problem in terms of getting in and out of neighborhoods along Mineral Avenue. So the neighbors have been reaching out. I put together with community development and public works a community meeting with them. I think it was last fall. And we had a great showing, and we had a lot of great input. And since then, the Public Works Department and the traffic engineer, Aaron, have worked very hard on coming up with alternatives, with solutions, with ways that we can do short-term, long-term, inexpensive, a little more expensive, solutions to the safety issues out there. Because we all recognize that if we don't have a safe way for people to get in and out of the streets, be it ped, bike, vehicle, then that is our responsibility. We need to make sure that that's taken care of. And we had our last community meeting with the group this past Thursday, and presented some of the final recommendations, which will then be coming to council for approval in terms of short-term budget and long-term budget. And it was great to see. The community was very appreciative. They were supportive of the recommendations. We're hearing back from the neighbors that participated in the event that they really appreciated the work that went into it. And I think it was a really good example of how we can work together with our neighborhood communities. We're not solving every problem. Everybody's not walking away 100% happy, but we have definitely created a greater situation of success in that area than we started out with. So congratulations to Public Works, and especially to Aaron. He's an incredible asset to the team. And I'm looking forward to, working through the continuing budget and, solutions that we have on that area. But I think it's an example of what we can do in other places in the community where we struggle with some of these challenges. Bowls may be the next challenge. So that's all I have.
Thank you. I just have two comments based on some comments tonight. The Denver water rate increase, I think we all received something in the mail that addressed it, but it didn't really address it the way that the speaker did today. It addressed it a little differently from a different perspective. I think it would be important for us maybe to take a look at what is really the impact of Denver water and the rate increase on the community, so that we have some understanding of that. And it's a very valid point that if the city doesn't stand up to Denver water on these issues, there really is no other advocate. So I think that's something maybe to consider. I don't have an answer, or a specific request, but it's got to definitely be on our radar screen.
Mr. Mayor, if I may, I'd be happy to report back on our understanding of that. I've had engineering staff kind of monitor the issue, but I could put together kind of a report of our understanding.
And then the other one was the lighting, discussion about the lighting ordinance. And I was around when the previous lighting ordinance that we had, which was very complex and very complicated, and it was given up for something much simpler. But the simpler one was light doesn't shine on other people's property, period. And there was a diagram included in there that tried to explain that. And rather than coming up with a universal angle or a universal height to ground angle and some of the other types of things, it basically said, don't allow lights to shine into other people's property. And if so, it was a complaint-based system, and that it would be followed up based on the complaints rather than by the city proactively enforcing an ordinance. So I believe that tonight we've heard a complaint on whatever it is that they just did with those lights in northern part of downtown. So we probably need to look at it.
Mr. Mayor, I'd be happy to. I'm not real informed about the specifics of the program, but I'd be happy to kind of understand that from Excel and report back and see if there are some options for shielding. I do know that used to be an option. I just have no idea today whether or not that's an issue for them.
Thank you. I don't have anything further. And with that, we're adjourned at 9:19.